Welcome to the spark that lights the night. Nooka's here with vibes that fly so high.
Welcome to Nooka, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary stories behind the world's most iconic brands. Today we're diving into a tale that'll blow your mind, the incredible journey of Nike, from a $50 loan to a global empire. But forget everything you think you know about the swoosh, because we're taking you back to the beginning, to the days when Nike was just a crazy idea in the mind of an introverted accountant named Phil Knight.
Oh man, I'm so excited for this. I mean, everyone knows Nike, right? But I bet there's so much we don't know about how it all started.
You're absolutely right. This story has it all: risk, innovation, near bankruptcy, and a cast of characters that you couldn't make up if they tried. So buckle up, because we're about to take a wild ride through the early days of one of the most recognizable brands on the planet.
I'm ready. But wait, you mentioned an introverted accountant. That doesn't sound like the typical profile of someone who'd build a massive sports brand.
Haha, you'd be surprised. That's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. Let's start at the very beginning. The year is 1962, and Phil Knight is a student at Stanford Business School. He writes a paper titled, "Can Japanese Sports Shoes Do to German Sports Shoes What Japanese Cameras Did to German Cameras?"
Wow, that's quite a mouthful. But I guess it makes sense, given how Japanese electronics took over in the 60s and 70s.
Exactly. Now, most people would have just turned in the paper and forgotten about it. But not Phil. This idea got stuck in his head, and it wouldn't let go. So what does he do? He decides to take a trip around the world.
A world trip? How does that fit into starting a shoe company?
Well, it's all part of the journey. During this trip, Phil finds himself in Japan, and he does something that would change the course of his life and the sports world forever. He makes a cold call to the CEO of Onitsuka Tiger, a Japanese shoe company.
Hold up, he just called them out of the blue? That's so bold for an introvert.
It was, and amazingly, it worked. Phil managed to secure a meeting with Mr. Onitsuka himself. Picture this: a young American, fresh out of business school, sitting across from Japanese executives, trying to convince them to let him distribute their shoes in the United States.
Oh man, I can feel the tension from here. How did it go?
Well, against all odds, it worked. Phil walked out of that meeting with a handshake deal to distribute Tiger shoes in the western United States. But here's where it gets really interesting and a bit crazy.
I'm all ears.
Phil comes back to the States, borrows $50 from his father, and starts a company called Blue Ribbon Sports. Now get this, he's selling these Japanese running shoes out of the trunk of his lime green Plymouth Valiant.
Wait, what? Out of his car? That's not exactly a high-tech operation.
Not at all. But that's the beauty of it. Phil would drive around to track meets all over Oregon and the West Coast, literally selling shoes out of his trunk. In that first year, he managed to sell $8,000 worth of shoes.
$8,000? That doesn't sound like much for a whole year's work.
You're right, it wasn't. And here's the kicker. Phil was still working full-time as an accountant to support himself and the business. Can you imagine the stress of juggling a full-time job while trying to get a startup off the ground?
Oof, that sounds brutal. How did he manage it all?
Well, it wasn't easy. Phil was constantly walking a financial tightrope. He'd order shoes from Japan, wait months for them to arrive, sell them as quickly as possible, and then immediately use that money to order more shoes. It was a constant cycle of risk and reward.
That sounds incredibly stressful. I mean, what if a shipment got delayed or something went wrong?
Oh, things went wrong all the time. There were countless near disasters. Shipments would get held up in customs, orders would arrive late, and Phil was constantly on the verge of running out of cash. He called it operating by the seat of our pants.
Yikes. So how did he keep the business afloat?
Well, that's where the bank of dad came in. Phil's father would often lend him money to keep things going, but eventually even that well ran dry, and Phil had to start dealing with real banks, which was a whole new level of stress.
I can imagine. Banks aren't exactly known for their patience with risky startups.
Exactly. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Phil wasn't in this alone. He had a partner, his former track coach from the University of Oregon, Bill Bowerman.
Oh, the guy who destroyed his wife's waffle iron, right?
Haha, you've done your homework. Yes, that's the one. Bill Bowerman was a legendary track coach, but he was also a mad scientist when it came to shoes. He was constantly tinkering, trying to make lighter, better performing shoes for his athletes.
And the waffle iron? What's that all about?
Ah, the famous waffle iron story. So one day in 1971, Bill is sitting at the breakfast table looking at his wife's waffle iron. And he has this crazy idea. What if he poured rubber into the waffle iron to create a new kind of sole?
No way. Did it work?
Well, it ruined the waffle iron, much to his wife's dismay. But it did lead to the creation of the iconic waffle trainer sole. This was a huge innovation. It provided better traction and was lighter than other soles on the market.
That's incredible. I mean, to think that one of Nike's most famous innovations came from a kitchen appliance.
It just goes to show that innovation can come from the most unexpected places. But let's back up a bit, because there's another key player in this story we haven't talked about yet, Jeff Johnson.
Who's Jeff Johnson?
Jeff was Blue Ribbon Sports' first full-time employee. He was, well, let's just say he was a character. Phil describes him in the book as brilliant but eccentric. Jeff was obsessed with details and had this incredible work ethic.
Sounds like the kind of person you'd want in a startup.
Absolutely. Jeff was crucial to the company's early success. He was the one who suggested the name Nike for the company when they decided to create their own brand.
Hold on, Nike wasn't always called Nike?
Nope. Remember, they started as Blue Ribbon Sports, distributing Onitsuka Tiger shoes. But as the relationship with Onitsuka began to sour, they realized they needed their own brand. Jeff, being the classics buff he was, suggested Nike after the Greek goddess of victory.
That's so cool. But wait, what happened with Onitsuka? Why did the relationship sour?
Now that's a traumatic story. You see, Onitsuka had also given distribution rights to an East Coast competitor. This led to a tense legal battle that nearly destroyed the company.
Oh no, how did they handle that?
Well, it was touch and go for a while. Phil had to fly back to Japan to negotiate with Onitsuka. Meanwhile, they were secretly developing their own shoe designs, preparing to launch Nike as a separate brand if things went south with Onitsuka.
Wow, talk about a high-stakes game of chicken.
It really was, and it all came to a head in 1971. Blue Ribbon Sports officially became Nike Inc. on May 30th of that year. They cut ties with Onitsuka and launched their own brand with the now famous swoosh logo.
The swoosh. I've always wondered about that. Where did it come from?
Now that's another great story. The swoosh was designed by a graphic design student named Carolyn Davidson. Phil paid her just $35 for the design.
$35 for one of the most recognizable logos in the world? That's insane.
It is. But don't worry, Phil made it right later on. He gave Carolyn 500 shares of Nike stock, which became incredibly valuable as the company grew.
Phew. I'm glad to hear that. So at this point, they've got their own brand, their own logo. Things must have gotten easier, right?
Well, not exactly. They still faced enormous challenges. Remember, they were competing against established giants like Adidas and Puma. They needed something to set them apart.
And what was that something?
It was a combination of things. First, there was the innovative design, like the waffle trainer we talked about earlier. But equally important was their approach to marketing and athlete relationships.
Oh, like signing big-name athletes to promote the brand?
Eventually, yes. But it started much smaller. One of their first major athlete endorsements was a University of Oregon runner named Steve Prefontaine.
I've heard that name before. Wasn't he some kind of running prodigy?
He absolutely was. Pre, as he was known, was a force of nature on the track and had this incredible charisma off it. He became not just a spokesperson for Nike, but almost a muse for the company's rebel spirit.
A rebel spirit? For a shoe company?
Exactly. That's what set Nike apart. They weren't just selling shoes, they were selling an attitude, a way of approaching sports and life. Their early marketing campaigns were edgy, bold, and sometimes controversial.
I can see how that would appeal to young athletes, but how did they go from this scrappy startup to the global brand we know today?
Well, that's a story that spans decades, but a few key moments stand out. The introduction of air technology in 1979 was huge. Then in 1984, they signed a rookie basketball player named Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Now that's a name everyone knows.
Absolutely. The Air Jordan line revolutionized not just basketball shoes, but the entire concept of athlete endorsements. But here's the thing, even as Nike was growing into this global powerhouse, they never lost that scrappy, innovative spirit from their early days.
It's amazing to think that all of this came from a guy selling shoes out of his car trunk. It really makes you wonder what other world-changing ideas are out there just waiting for someone crazy enough to try them.
That's exactly right. And that's really the heart of the Nike story. It's not just about shoes or sports, it's about the power of a crazy idea, backed by relentless determination and a willingness to take risks.
Wow, this is all so inspiring. I feel like I need to go start a company or something now.
Haha. Well, before you quit your day job, remember that for every success story like Nike, there are countless others that didn't make it. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. As Phil Knight says in his memoir, the cowards never started and the weak died along the way. That leaves us, ladies and gentlemen, us.
That's a powerful quote. It really captures the spirit of entrepreneurship.
It does indeed. And on that note, I think it's a good place to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into some of the key moments that shaped Nike's culture and brand. Stay with us, folks. This is Nooka, and we're just getting started with the incredible story of Nike.
All right, I'm pumped. Can't wait to hear more about Nike's journey. So, what happened after they signed Michael Jordan?
Well, the Michael Jordan deal was a game changer, but it wasn't smooth sailing from there. Nike faced some serious challenges in the late 80s and early 90s. They had to deal with manufacturing issues, changing consumer tastes, and intense competition.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. I always thought Nike just kept growing nonstop after the Jordan deal.
That's a common misconception. In fact, Nike had a pretty rough patch in the early 90s. They had to lay off about 20% of their workforce in 1993.
Ouch! That must have been tough. How did they bounce back?
It was a combination of factors. They doubled down on innovation, expanded into new markets, and perhaps most importantly, they refocused on their core values and culture.
Culture? I mean, I get innovation and market expansion, but how does culture play into a company's success?
That's a great question. You see, Nike's culture has always been a key part of their success. Phil Knight understood that culture isn't something you can dictate from the top down. It emerges from the people within the organization.
That's interesting. Can you give me an example of how that played out?
Sure. Remember how we talked about the early days with Phil and his ragtag group of misfits and seekers? That spirit of rebellion and innovation became ingrained in Nike's DNA. They fostered a culture where people were encouraged to take risks and think outside the box.
Oh, like the waffle iron incident?
Exactly. But it wasn't just about product innovation. It was about how they approached everything. For instance, their advertising campaigns in the 80s and 90s were revolutionary. They didn't just showcase products. They told stories and promoted a lifestyle.
Oh, yeah, I remember some of those ads. Didn't they have one with Charles Barkley saying he wasn't a role model?
Yes, that's a perfect example. That ad was controversial, but it got people talking. It wasn't just about selling shoes. It was about challenging conventions and sparking conversations.
That's so cool. But didn't Nike also face some criticism about their manufacturing practices during this time?
You're absolutely right to bring that up. In the 1990s, Nike faced serious allegations about labor conditions in their overseas factories. This was a major crisis for the company.
Oh no, that sounds bad. How did they handle it?
Well, initially not very well. They were accused of being defensive and not taking the allegations seriously enough. But this crisis ended up being a turning point for Nike.
Really? How so?
It forced them to take a hard look at their supply chain and corporate responsibility practices. Phil Knight actually gave a speech in 1998 where he acknowledged the problems and committed to improving conditions in their factories.
Wow, that must have been a tough moment for him.
It was, but it was also a crucial one. Nike implemented new policies, increased monitoring of their factories, and became more transparent about their practices. In many ways, this crisis pushed them to become a leader in corporate responsibility.
That's pretty admirable. It's not easy to admit mistakes and make big changes like that.
Absolutely. And it's a great example of how Nike's culture of adaptability and innovation extended beyond just product design. They were able to take a major crisis and use it as an opportunity for growth and improvement.
It's amazing how much a company's culture can impact its success, but I'm curious, how did Nike maintain this culture as they grew into such a massive global company?
That's an excellent question. It's not easy to maintain a startup mentality when you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but Nike has always tried to stay true to its roots. They've done this in a few ways.
Oh, like what?
Well, for one, they've always emphasized the importance of sports and athletes in their company culture. Many Nike employees are former athletes or sports enthusiasts. This helps keep them connected to their core mission of serving athletes.
That makes sense. I guess it would be hard to lose sight of your purpose when you're surrounded by people who are passionate about sports.
Exactly. They also have a practice of rotating executives through different parts of the company. This helps prevent silos from forming and keeps fresh ideas flowing.
Oh, that's smart. But doesn't that make it hard for people to specialize?
It can be challenging, but Nike believes the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. It helps executives understand the business from multiple angles and fosters a more collaborative environment.
I see. So we've talked a lot about the past, but what about Nike today? How are they staying innovative in the 21st century?
Great question. Nike has been at the forefront of integrating technology into their products and business model. They've invested heavily in digital technology, data analytics, and even artificial intelligence.
Whoa, AI in sneakers? How does that work?
Haha, not quite AI in the sneakers themselves, although who knows what the future holds, but they're using AI and data analytics to personalize customer experiences, optimize their supply chain, and even design new products.
That's so cool. Can you give me an example?
Sure. One great example is their Nike Buy You program, formerly known as Nike ID. It allows customers to design their own custom shoes online. The back end of this system uses AI to manage inventory and production.
Oh man, I've actually used that. I had no idea there was so much tech behind it.
Yep, it's pretty impressive. They've also been innovating in areas like sustainability. They've set ambitious goals to reduce their carbon footprint and use more sustainable materials in their products.
That's great to hear. It's important for big companies to take responsibility for their environmental impact.
Absolutely. And it's not just about being responsible. Nike sees sustainability as a source of innovation. For example, they've developed new materials made from recycled plastic bottles and factory scraps.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like they're turning trash into treasure.
That's a great way to put it. And it's a perfect example of how Nike's culture of innovation continues to drive the company forward.
This is all so fascinating, but I have to ask, what about the future? Where does Nike go from here?
The million-dollar question, or should I say the billion-dollar question? Nike, like many companies, is looking towards a future that's increasingly digital and personalized.
Digital? But they make physical products, right?
They do, but remember, Nike isn't just selling shoes or clothes. They're selling an experience, a lifestyle. They're investing heavily in their digital ecosystem, including apps like Nike Run Club and Nike Training Club.
Oh yeah, I have those on my phone.
Exactly. These apps aren't just about selling products, they're about creating a community and keeping Nike at the center of people's fitness journeys. They're also exploring areas like esports and virtual reality.
Esports? Really? That seems un-Nike-like.
It might seem that way at first, but remember, Nike's mission is to serve athletes, and they have a very broad definition of what an athlete is. Phil Knight famously said, "If you have a body, you are an athlete."
Huh. I never thought about it that way. So Nike sees gamers as athletes too?
In a sense, yes. They're recognizing that the definition of sport and athleticism is evolving, and they want to be at the forefront of that evolution.
That's pretty forward-thinking. It's amazing how a company that started selling running shoes out of a car trunk is now thinking about virtual reality and esports.
It really is, and I think that's a testament to the enduring power of the culture and values that Phil Knight and his team established in those early days.
Yeah, it's like they're still that scrappy startup at heart, even though they're this massive global brand now.
That's a great way to put it. They've managed to maintain that entrepreneurial spirit, that willingness to take risks and try new things, even as they've grown into a multi-billion-dollar company.
It's really inspiring. It makes me wonder what other companies out there might be the next Nike.
Well, that's the exciting thing about entrepreneurship and innovation. You never know where the next big idea might come from. It could be someone tinkering in their garage right now, just like Bill Bowerman with his waffle iron.
Haha, yeah. I'll keep an eye out for anyone destroying kitchen appliances in the name of innovation.
You never know. But in all seriousness, I think the key takeaway from Nike's story is that success isn't just about having a great product or a clever marketing campaign. It's about building a culture of innovation, taking calculated risks, and staying true to your core values even as you grow and evolve.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about what you do, but how you do it.
Exactly. And that's something that applies not just to big corporations like Nike, but to anyone trying to bring an idea to life or make their mark on the world.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'll never look at my Nike shoes the same way again.
I'm glad you found it inspiring. And remember, every time you see that swoosh, you're not just looking at a logo, you're looking at a symbol of perseverance, innovation, and the power of a crazy idea.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing this amazing story.
It's been my pleasure. And to all our listeners out there, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the Nike story. Remember, whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, or just someone with a wild idea, there's a little bit of that Nike spirit in all of us. So in the words of Nike's famous slogan, just do it.
Love it. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up. This has been Nooka, exploring the extraordinary stories behind the world's most iconic brands.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, keep pushing your limits and chasing your dreams. Who knows? Maybe someday we'll be telling your story on this podcast.
Ooh, that would be amazing. All right, signing off. This has been Nooka, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Take care, everyone.